Okay, get the slideshow going. Get a pointer. Okay, we're going to be talking about Agile today. And thing is that this is not material that has been supplied by PMI. So there is no direct correlation to what's on the test. However, it is still eligible for contact hours so that you do get credit for this. And it will give you a good background on what's going to be transpiring within the corporation, where we're moving more to an agile development paradigm rather than a predictive one. Okay. So we're going to talk about the agile process first. And the reason I show, well, you'll understand a little bit later on why I've got the stone skipping around there. And we've got three little instances of water spouting up. Okay, Agile Manifesto was created back in 2001 at a software engineering convention, and it is complete right here. So they said that we are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. Through this work, we have come to value four things over four other things: individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. Now, notice that we value the items on the left over the items on the right. But there is still a lot of value to processes and tools, comprehensive documentation, contract negotiation, and following a plan where they're appropriate. So there are times where we need to use certain tools, but that doesn't take precedence over people getting together, discussing what needs to be delivered, and making decisions. Working software is something that we want to deliver. If we have a choice, we'll deliver the working software over comprehensive documentation. Like any of you who are ancient enough to remember the old days where you'd get a half a dozen diskettes, 3.5-inch diskettes, and a book that was about 5 times bigger than the New York telephone book for documentation. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation, meaning that we want to be engaged with our customers continuously, so that rather than having a single point contract that specifies everything up front, we'd rather have an agreement with the customers, and I'm sure that the attorneys will mandate a contract, but one that isn't totally comprehensive contract, where in it we spell out that we will be working together to deliver what the customer needs, what is of value to the customer. And then responding to change, we value that over following a plan. We'll talk a little bit about that in a couple of minutes here. Okay, so it isn't that we don't value these things on the right. It's just that we value the ones on the left more. Okay, there are 12 principles that accompany the Agile Manifesto, and we're going to go through each one of them. So the list is on these two slides. And I did send Brian Barry a copy of these slides. I'm sure that he hasn't had time yet to post them, but we'll get them posted to the normal location where you pull the material. So let's dig into these. Principle 1, satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. You may hear especially if you're working with SAFe, you may hear this referred to as delivering value to the customer. So we want to deliver value to the customer in short steps. So as you can see in Agile, customer satisfaction is one of the major goals for software development. Agile principles hold that the customers are best satisfied when the software is early, not faster, but the most important parts get delivered sooner so that they realize value much more rapidly than they would if it was a waterfall or a predictive project. Continuous. We don't deliver everything at once. We take and establish what you may hear of as a minimum viable product or an MVP, and then enhance it over time so that the customer has value up front, and as time progresses, they receive more and more value. And valuable. Not doing things the right way, but doing them the most valuable way. What that means is that if the customer changes their mind, if there's something new that comes up, we don't just blindly follow what we had laid out at the beginning of the project or the effort. What we need to be able to do is to adapt to the changes that are definitely going to come through the life of the project. Principle 2 is welcome changes, even late in the development. Okay, now, you've seen this. In a traditional project, a PMP is trained that their job as a project manager is to prevent change or to mitigate change.
Got it. Okay.
Somebody's not muted. If you could mute, please, if you're not speaking. Okay. So with Agile, we embrace change. It's a good thing. And we use the opportunities when change is presented to work with the customers to determine exactly how we need to change and what value we would be delivering to the customer. Okay. You'll hear about concepts such as a backlog, a prioritized backlog, so that the work that is done by the Agile team, whether it's a Scrum team or an XP team or a Kanban team, is done based on what the highest priority items are. That priority can change at any time, and it's up to the product owners or the business side to determine what the priorities are, not the development side. Okay. Principle 3 is deliver working software frequently. With waterfall or a predictive project, everything's delivered at once in a big release.
Larry,
Now, yes.
I did have a question regarding the previous slide.
Sure, Irene.
How do you account for the cost of a project when the ability to make changes at any point are not a bad thing?
Okay, hold that question.
Okay.
We're going to address that in a little bit, and I've
Okay.
got slides to present along that way. That's an excellent question.
Thank you.
Because other things have to change too. So hold on to that. Okay. At delivering working software frequently, what we want to do is, rather than deliver everything at once, all the way until the customer is surprised at what we've delivered, and it may or may not address the needs that we thought it would when we started, or we've gone through so many change requests that the project is overcommitted or overspending the budget. What we want to do is deliver small increments of value to the customer. So every couple of weeks, We want to be able to be ready to deliver to the customer something that will enhance the product that we've already put out. Now, and we'll see this in a slide later, so I can skip the next one. But if on your smartphone, you always see that there are like 150 apps that need updating. And it seems like it's every day that you get a huge number of them that want updates. It's along the same lines of how we want to transform AT&T so that every and the standard cadence at AT&T now is 2 weeks, so that every 2 weeks a team should be able to deliver value to the customer. That means that if the customer is ready for it, if they want it, if they need it, that functionality can be deployed and the customer can receive value at that point. But that when the software is delivered or the product is delivered is determined by the business, not by the development teams again. Now, this illustrates the Agile value proposition, and I naturally stole this. Stole all these slides actually, just made a couple of little changes. But with this, this illustrates in the dotted line delivery of a waterfall project where no value is realized until everything is delivered and accepted, and then all of the value is there for the customer. Now, with Agile development, there's incremental deliveries all along the way where you're adding value to what you've deployed earlier. And in this illustration, the Agile delivery takes longer than the waterfall. That may be true. There are many times where the value realized by an Agile delivery very much outweighs what a waterfall delivery would be. So you can have all three of the situations where the waterfall project delivers the value sooner than the Agile effort. You can have the Agile effort delivering sooner than the waterfall, and you can have them delivering at the same time. The thing is, with Agile, you're making all these changes along the way so that you're honing in on what the customer needs, so that rather than finding out that something that you did deliver is not quite as valuable as you thought it was 18 months ago or at the last change request. But with the Agile development, you've got an opportunity every 2 weeks to make a change and to deliver value to the customer. This was the slide I was talking about where you see that the apps on your smartphone or your tablet need updating every couple of weeks, every couple of days. I think, I can't remember who it is. I think it was either Google or Facebook that was doing several updates per day, so that they release new software every few minutes and bundle things up and do releases at a lower frequency actually. So that's all we wanted to say here, that the updates are small, and what we want to do is move to this sort of development method. Principle 4 is business and IT work together daily. And this is somewhat of a different concept because with Waterfall, you've got deliverables, you've got quality gates that you need to satisfy. And for the most part, once requirements are done, the business throws it over the wall to development. And development takes it from there, does a high-level design, low-level design, implementation, testing, and all that. Usually without too much involvement from the business. With Agile development, we need the the business to be involved daily with the development teams so that they can see what the development teams are delivering, reflect that back to the customer, bring in new customer requirements or changes, based on what they've been delivered so far, and make the changes that are required to deliver even more value to the customers. The key here is communications. With agile development, you're relying on person-to-person communications a lot more than you are with written communications. So that if you're uh, doing Scrum, business owner or the product owner is a part of the Scrum team. They attend the stand-ups. They're a part of. They actually should be running all of the demos that occur because they are the customer's surrogate there for the development team. Okay. So again, it's communications. It's the person-to-person communications that the Agile Manifesto stated. Principle 5 is build projects around motivated individuals. Key thing here is Agile isn't a process. It's a set of principles. It's a framework that you use. And, it's different from the way we've developed software before. So support, trust, and transparency are key to Agile development. So supporting each other, all team members support each other. The entire enterprise supports each other ideally. And trust. That's where you're trusting the product owner to bring you the best information from the customer. And the product owner trusts that you are actually delivering the best that you can. From the development team is delivering the best that they can to the customer. Transparency is something that isn't usually seen in waterfall type projects. And transparency means that you tell the truth all the time. That if there's a problem, you identify the problem, you make it visible, and you come up with a way to mitigate it so that you don't hide things during project reviews. I've been in too many project reviews in my career um, to know that it's not always the way things really are. I've seen reviews being created so that it looks like things are working well when actually everybody's scrambling just to understand what the heck's going on. So transparency really is a key to agile development. Principle 6 is face-to-face conversations. Now, one of the drawbacks of the way we've had to work during the COVID lockdowns or being away from a place of work is that unless you're using a video conference, that you're not going to be able to read body language. And a lot of human communications is nonverbal through body language, such as rolling your eyes at something, um, going to sleep during a meeting, and especially in this situation that I'm in right now, I have really no idea of how many people are on the line. I have no idea of how many people are actually listening, how many people have gone off and taken the dog for a walk or had a conversation with their significant other or exactly what they're doing. I can't see that. I can't change my presentation based on feedback from my audience. So human communications, facial expressions, body language, extremely important. So face-to-face conversation builds trust and transparency. If you know somebody, if you've interacted with them, you can most likely consider them another human being that you value more than just a voice over the phone. So you don't hide things. And transparency especially is much easier if you can see that the rest of the team is acting in a positive way when you're telling something that didn't go right. It also enhances productivity because we talk to each other. You run into somebody at the water cooler or at the kitchen or the microwave, and you start talking about things. Might be work, might be outside of work. The thing is that um, you know if you're talking about things about work, you're getting more things done. And if you're co-located, it's easier to just walk over to somebody else's area and you know exchange ideas. Now, we've gotten pretty good at this, exchanging the ideas and the information without being face to face. We've got a lot of tools that we are able to use, including things like WebEx, like we're using right now. It isn't as effective as being face to face, but we're learning how to do it so that it's pretty close. And then face-to-face conversations allow more discussions, more informal discussions or impromptu discussions. Principle 7 is working software first. And the statement here really sums it up. Agile teams are most concerned with working software above all else. The documentation is required. Agile teams don't get away without doing documentation. But the thing is that the main deliverable is the value to the customer. Um, the thing is that if the documentation isn't really up to snuff, but the value that you've delivered to the customer is exactly what they wanted, what they can use and what they can make money from, they're going to be more satisfied than if you send them some fantastic documentation and the product doesn't work worth a darn. And as you know, some of the world's best software has almost no documentation. Um, used to be, like I said before, that you'd get something the size of the Manhattan telephone directory with each new release of Excel that you got. Now, what do you have? You've got the ability to uh, just look at online documentation for the same product so that you don't have these massive volumes that you have to send out. Principle 8 is sustainable development. And this is where I forget who asked the question. This is where it comes in. Agile is a capacity-driven model. What does that mean? Means that what we want to be able to do is to fund the teams that are required to develop or to deliver value to the customer. So that if we've got, say, a dozen Scrum teams that are delivering value to the customer in a particular value stream or area, that we fund them for the year. We do annual budgeting, fund that team for the year so that the work is brought to them rather than doing a project-based funding. So that if one particular feature takes longer than originally estimated, it's a decision of the product owner to either continue with that development and push something else off, or to terminate that development if it's not as valuable as we originally thought and do other work. But the thing is that we still fund the same number of developers, same number of teams. Going through here, Agile does not work to dates or to cost, so that it is what the development teams can commit to within a time box. And that time box can be either an iteration of 2 weeks. It could be what Agile refers, or what Scaled Agile refers to as a program increment of 6 iterations, or it could be other time boxes. But the way we do that is time and cost are fixed, so that, as I said, we fund the development teams for an extended period of time. And scope is reduced or expanded as capacity allows, so that if your estimates are lower than, or your estimates are higher than it actually takes to implement, that's great. You don't have people just sitting there idle. They'll pull more work off the backlog. It'll be prioritized by the product owner, so it's the highest priority item that they can be working on. So we're continuously delivering value to the customer. Um, Historically, Agile teams work less overtime because they they commit, they make the commitments as to what they can do. If there's something that was incorrect in the estimates, business is involved in determining what gets done and in what time frame it gets done. So it's not, it ideally should not be work the overtime to get your commitments done and then, pick up right where you left off and work more overtime to make sure that everything gets done in the time that we want. And this is just an illustration of that, of traditional to agile. It's just about the opposite as to fixed and variable components. Principle 9 is attention to good design and technical excellence. We want to do the best that we can. You'll hear a term within Agile and SAFe that is called refactoring, where teams will devote time to go back through existing product and optimize the way it works, based on the knowledge that they have at that point in time. Because what you want to be able to do is give the best that you know at any particular point in time. Now, the way humans work, we learn. We learn continuously, so that at some time in the future, you're going to know more about the product that you delivered, say, a year ago than you did when you developed it and delivered it. So part of agile development is going back and making sure that you have the best that you can deliver today. It may make a result in redoing some of the work that you did and optimizing it. You really want to deliver the best that you know how to do. Make sure that you're delivering to, technically excellent product. Now, we're talking about the illustration here is talking about what's called velocity, or the number of story points that a team can deliver within a time box. So what you want to be able to do is really by learning about your product and being more proficient, increase the velocity over time. But what you want to do to start is track how many story points you can deliver within whatever time box you're measuring by. Okay. And look at ways, do a retrospective after that, and look at ways that you could increase productivity, that you could deliver more story points within that same increment of time, that same time box. Okay. This you may want to take 2 looks at. Maximize work not done. If you don't have to do it, don't do it. Remove handoffs, eliminate delays, measure your cycle time, and reduce it. So what does that mean? You need to be aware of how you develop a product and deploy it, and make sure that you understand what goes into that. By that way, you can remove handoffs. Okay. Uh, the most time it's taken, say you've got uh, an architectural document that you're waiting for, because your architect's off doing something else, and you need that in order to maximize, to be able to start your work. Now, wouldn't it be better if you had an architect embedded with that team so that where they're dedicated to it, so that unless they were hit by a bus or won the lottery, that you wouldn't need to hand it off to them and wait for a handoff coming back. They'd be part of the team. They could be doing the work while some of the planning is being done, so that you want to remove or minimize handoffs, eliminate any of the delays. We always give people, 2 weeks to sign off on a document or a week to sign off on a document. That's dead time. That's a delay. That does nothing to efficiently bring value to our customers. Question every data item, every practice, every document, every step. If you cannot find a consequence for not doing it, get rid of it. You know? Analyze your process. Only do things that create value. Get rid of waste. Everything should contribute value. Um, Corollary is very important. Just because it looks wasteful to you doesn't mean that it isn't valuable to somebody else. Question it, but don't be foolish and just eliminate it. It's the same thing for helping somebody clean out a house or something like that too. And nobody said Rosebud? Okay. Um, Self-organizing teams is principle 11. What we're talking about here is that you establish a scrum team. Who's going to be the scrum master? Well, the team should decide that. How they're going to be divided up between development and test, if they are going to be divided up, or exactly how they're going to be doing the programming, should be a responsibility of the team itself. You really want to get the decisions at the level that really is working with whatever needs the decision. Okay. So self-organizing teams choose their own tools to a certain extent. We have, corporate mandates on what some of the tools that we have to use. Work in their own way together. I mean, if everybody likes working from 3 p.m. until midnight, that may be a way to go, as long as you have some time overlapping the rest of the teams, and know, uh, you're delivering value in the times that you committed to. Teams sort things out amongst themselves. You don't escalate everything. You don't go for a red Jeopardy every other day. You work it out. And as I said before, determine how to fill roles and perform activities. Who's going to be doing what should be determined by the team. So, but at the same time, management will still define constraints within which the team must work, such as coming to the office in person or producing reports or results. So if the management says you need to work from 8 to 6, and that's a constraint that you have. Principle 12 is reflect to improve. The culture of humility and continuous improvement is Agile. So what do? We hold retrospectives. at key times within the product lifecycle. Ideally, would be holding a retrospective after each increment so that we can determine what went well, what didn't go so well, and how we can fix it going forward so that we can do our jobs more efficiently and deliver more value to the customer. Yep. Okay. So in summation, agility is principles, not process. There are agile frameworks, but agility is a mindset. Okay. Just because we have something like Lean Kit or Agile Craft or Jira Align, uh, that doesn't mean that we're agile. Those are tools. Okay. We do iterative development. It may not be agile. It may be agile fall, where we're just replicating waterfall within a smaller time box. We don't want to do that. Um, any of the individual things that we've talked about, daily stand-ups, iterations, sprints, backlogs, or capacity-based funding, isn't agile. It's the mindset. And what we need to do is change the mindset from a predictive mindset to an agile mindset. And that starts with leadership. Okay, we're going to try a very, very low-tech way of listening to this. Take my headset and embed the microphone in the earphone. So if you can't hear, and I'm going to be monitoring on a separate phone here, that this is if we don't, if we're not able to listen to this video today, I highly suggest that you take a look at it. It's very, very different. It was done by a former captain of a nuclear submarine, attack submarine, and how he changed the way that the sub operated. So give me about a minute or so here and we'll get going.
I was trained for one submarine. My guys were trained to do what they were told.
Can you turn the captions on?
Some organizations where people just follow the leader into disastrous situations. So I got my guys together and I said, "Hey, we got a problem here." I was trained for another submarine. You're trained to do whatever.
All right, teach me, how do I turn the captions on?
Yeah, it should be where you see CC. It's over to the right.
Yeah.
Near the bottom.
Oh, closed captions. Duh. Why?
Yeah, it should.
Oop. Okay, I think we
Thank
got it.
you.
Sure. Thanks for mentioning it.
Can we restart it, please?
The leader into disastrous situations. So I got my guys together and I said, hey, we got a problem here. I was trained for another submarine. You're trained to do whatever nonsense comes out of my mouth. That's right, Captain. I mean, they knew. They already knew. Pretty much talking to myself. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do, guys? And we talked about it. Okay, what I really wanted to do was get ready for the inspection. But we were sitting in the wardroom. We spent a couple hours. We were talking about it. And we came up with all these different things. And, well, you Captain, you just got to be smarter. You got to give better orders. Like, well, how am I going to learn a whole nuclear submarine, miles and valves and pipes? I spent a year learning Olympia, 2 weeks over here. Okay, so in a year we'll be safe? That's not going to work. We had to deploy the submarine in 6 months. Talked about it, and they said, okay, there's only one logical solution. We figured it out. You, they're pointing at me, you shut up. What do you mean? That's not what captains do. That's not what captains of nuclear submarines do. They walk around. They give orders. They sound like Russell Crowe. Third, dive, make it up 500 feet. Helm left 15 degrees rudder, steady course 255. Load torpedoes and tubes 1, 2, 3, and 4. Flood down, open outer doors, right? Got it? You're right. So at that point, I vowed never to give another order. Down on my submarine, it had been very confusing because you couldn't have pointed. It would have been hard to say, well, who's the captain here? Because you couldn't have seen me giving orders. I did retain one order. The final order to launch a weapon, a torpedo or a missile, I kept with me because I felt that was going to result in the deaths of other human beings, that I didn't want that on anyone's conscience but mine. That was my moral and ethical responsibility. But even though everything else in the Navy, there's long lists of things that says the captain has to authorize. Captain should authorize. You got a couple nukes in your group, they'll tell you it's true. Captain authorize, submerge the ship, get underway, start up the reactor, shut down the reactor, connect to shore power, divorce from shore power, on and on, break rig for dive, on and on and on, pages of these things. I just refused to give those orders. What we replaced it with was intent. Giving instructions. If you want your people to think, don't give instructions, give intent. So they would come to you, hey, what do you want me to do? Well, left full rudder, steady course 255. No. So what are we trying to accomplish here today? Well, we're trying to get in position so that when the enemy submarine comes through, okay, so where do you think we should position the ship? Maybe over here. Good idea. Go there. You give intent to them, and they give intent to you. So my officer stopped requesting permission. And every other submarine, Captain, request permission to submerge the ship. Submerge the ship. Submerge the ship, aye. On Santa Fe, Captain, I intend to submerge the ship. Very well. They did it. It might seem like it's a very small, nuanced change of language, but it was hugely powerful because the psychological ownership now shifts to them. They need to discover the answer. Otherwise, you're always the answer man. You can never go home and eat dinner. So we started doing this. hugely powerful. Actually, we went another step. Then I got smarter and I said, when the officer said, Captain, I intend to submerge the ship, I would ask him, well, what do you think I'm thinking right now? And he'd look at me. Hard to tell. I'm guessing you're wondering whether it's safe. Bingo! I said, well, convince me it's safe. He said, Captain, I intend to submerge the ship. All men are below. Hatches are shut. Ship's rigged for dive. I checked the bottom deck. The submarine's in the water that's been assigned to us. Then later I would ask him, is it the right thing to do? They would say, well, yes, sir, because our mission requires that we. These are the two pillars that I think support this idea of giving control. These are the two pillars that need to be in place. The technical competence, which is represented by, is it safe? And the organizational clarity, represented by, is it the right thing to do? And you put those things in place, and then you can give control. And you give control, and you put those things in place. People are off to the. So think about what's happening now. My officers are starting to think like me because they have to think like, where should we do the ship? So the guys below them. Now this took 24 hours to happen. It took a couple years for the full implementation, but immediately there was change. The officers started thinking like me. So pretty soon I could go in the engine room, find the engine room lower level watch who was taking logs in the lube oil pump, and he would know what the submarine was doing. He would know whether we were up tight, close to the enemy, it was time to stay quiet, or whether we had backed out a little bit. This may be a good time to change filters, make a little bit of noise. A year later, received another inspection. A year later, we received an inspection. The inspecting team gave us the highest grade they had ever seen. Not that year, not in the Pacific, ever seen. Why? I mean, this crew had a captain who was a dummy. It's because that needle started moving up. And on another submarine, there was one guy in charge, one guy giving orders, one guy thinking, and 134 people doing what they're told. I don't care how smart you are. On my submarine, I got 135 thinking, active, passionate, creative, proactive, taking initiative people. It's a tidal wave. You don't stand a chance. Here's the solution. Move the authority to where the information is. You mean the software engineer can decide whether we ship the software? Yeah. You mean the client, my salesman can close the deal? Well, up to $1,000. No. Yes. Whatever the price? Yes. What does it take to make that happen? Now, if you're picturing a lot of people out there doing crazy things and a bunch of arrows going in a bunch of different directions, you have the wrong picture. You create the environment so that those people are out there making decisions as if the CEO were standing right behind them. And if it's not the same decision, it's actually a better decision because they have the information. And not only will you get better speed of execution because now you don't have this delay, what happens is those people feel like they matter because they're thinking. You engender thinking. You create the environment for thinking. The secret is nothing I said is hard. There's nothing hard. The only thing that's hard is you. It will feel wrong. You've been genetically and culturally programmed to take charge and make it happen. Take control and attract followers. And what you want is to give control and create leaders. It will feel wrong, and you will repeatedly start down this path if you so choose, and then you'll be angry at yourself like I was. You will have a failure, and you'll go back to the old way. You will pick yourself up, and you will go again. You will go again. And by doing so, you will achieve the greatest thing possible. You will have achieved greatness, not because of the deeds and acts that you did, but because you set an environment where the people around you and their families and their schools and their organizations and their businesses, they've achieved greatness. That will be the greatest thing of all. Go forth and be great.
Okay. I will let you know that that particular video has been shown to leadership here at AT&T multiple times. Okay. It's on YouTube, as you can see. So you can go out, look at it, share it with your coworkers, your friends. If the conversation lags over Thanksgiving, yeah, something that you can pull out. Okay. So leaders provide the organization with patterns of expected behaviors. Like we saw in the video, what we want is a generative culture where we have high cooperation. We have messengers who are trained in what we need, how we need to do things and what we need to do. Responsibilities are shared across the board. It isn't compartmentalized at all, so that we end up with uh, a supportive organization where collaboration is encouraged and we honor failure. Failure isn't something to be avoided. If it happens, it happens, and we learn from it. We take the lessons that we've learned and make things better, and we do our best to avoid that same type of problem in the future. And innovation is encouraged and implemented so that if someone has a better idea about implementing something that is of value to the customer and it's prioritized by the product owner or by the business, then yes, you take that innovation, you implement it, you give the customer the best that you know how to. Now, on the other hand, there are pathological cultures which are very power oriented, and bureaucratic cultures which are rule oriented. There are some reasons why you have to have a lot of rules and regulations. Uh, when you're like the classic AT&T, where we were basically a public utility, we come under the governance of both federal, state, local uh, governments, so that there are rules that we have to follow. So like I say, there's some areas where you have to have a very rule-oriented culture. But what we're transforming to is more of a generative culture. Okay, as we said, agility is a mindset. We talked about the 4 values in the Agile Manifesto. We looked at the 12 principles that support that. And then agility is manifested through many practices and tools. We've got different ways of different tools that we can use. We can use Kanban, we can use Scrum, we can use SAFe. And really what you're looking at, what you're seeing here is kind of a representation of the relative size of the effort that you'd use these particular tools. Kanban is great for showing a very gross representation of where things sit within the development cycle. And we'll take a look at a Kanban board later. Scrum is able to handle some more complex problems and be able to give you more information about the health of the particular effort. And then SAFe is really just, SAFe means Scaled Agile Framework. So that you're taking Agile teams and scaling their efforts to a corporate or an enterprise level effort, so that it's really a framework for expanding the use of Agile within your organization. We're going to talk about lean because you're going to hear about lean agile teams. And lean is a way of thinking about creating needed value with fewer resources and less waste. Lean is a practice consisting of continuous experimentation to achieve perfect value with zero waste. May not achieve it, but that's what the goal is. Lean thinking and practice occur together. And again, this is a transformation of the way that we've historically thought and the way we've historically implemented things. Lean thinking always starts with the customer. The customer is who we need to satisfy. And lean, the concept of lean originated in the automotive industry in Japan, where they were working on quality initiatives. Why do we want to focus on principles? Deming says that a common disease that afflicts management the world over, this is not just the United States, it's throughout the world, is the impression that our problems are different. They're different to be sure, but the principles that will help to improve the quality of products and services are universal in nature. And that's how Deming made his mark in development and manufacturing. Lean Agile transformation is going to deliver substantial benefits in delighting the customer sooner. However, it's a significant change and every implementation is different. Now, in order to transform an entire organization, it goes beyond software development. Everyone involved in the business needs to have an agile mindset. Everyone involved in finance has to have an agile mindset. Everyone involved in human resources has to have an agile mindset. And they have to change the way they've been doing things to support agile deliveries. Leaders should understand why practices work. It's part of knowing what it is they must do. If a practice needs to change, understanding the principles will assure that the change moves the enterprise in the right direction. So you want to keep your principles the same and make your decisions based on the principles. Something else you'll probably run into is something called the House of Lean. And this really starts with the foundation of Lean Agile leadership, with the goal being value delivered to our customer and value to the corporation. To do that, there are 4 pillars in the House of Lean. Respect for people and culture. One of these days, these fingers are going to work right. Flow of information and of product. Innovation and relentless improvement. This is where we examine what we do, how we do it, and make plans on how to improve it and implement those plans. The big thing is that we don't just talk about it, we do it. So this is a comparison of traditional approach and Lean Agile approach. So first and foremost, people are told what to work on. The Lean Agile approach, teams contribute to the decision making about what they will be working on and when they'll be working on it. You may have heard something that's related to SAFe, which is called PI planning. It's program increment planning, where teams plan what they're going to be doing for the next 12 weeks. Okay. They're intimately involved in it. The business gives them priorities about what needs to be delivered, and the teams decide what they can handle and when they can handle it. People are moved from project to project and work on many projects at the same time, like multitasking. What we want to do with an agile approach is to have the work flow to the team. Remember, I keep saying about taking work off the backlog. Value is delivered incrementally so that we go through very short delivery cycles, development and delivery cycles, and we keep delivering value to the customer. Detailed requirements laden project plans are created before work begins. having the full project plan, having all the requirements done, volumes requirements expressed in ways that the requirements writer understood. And in a lean agile approach, there's something called a lean business case that is created. It's one sheet of paper, maybe two sheets of paper that detail how this effort is going to be valuable to the corporation and valuable to our customers. Lean business cases are utilized to prioritize and fund the work that matters most. So all along the line, from the portfolio all the way through the development teams, work is prioritized, value is prioritized, and we work on the most valuable things that we can deliver the fastest. Plans are project driven and typically follow inflexible annual plans that are difficult to change in a traditional approach. The lean agile approach, plans are value driven and are adaptive to produce maximum consumer value or customer value. So we're allowed to change things very easily in an agile environment with the agile approach. We need to make conscious, good decisions as to what needs to change and decide if more value can be delivered to the customer with a change. Now, this isn't just changing things to change things. It really is determining what brings the most value to both the corporation and the customer and prioritizing it accordingly. Okay. The traditional approach work is very detailed before it is even started. You're going to do requirements, business requirements, development requirements, high-level design, low-level design, architectural design. And then you hand it over the wall to a development team that may or may not understand it. In a lean agile approach, the work is incrementally delivered and customer feedback. This is the important part. Customer feedback is gathered so to define what is worked on next and if what has just been worked on needs to change. In the competitive environment that our customers and we are in, we have to anticipate that things are going to change. Something that was valuable 18 months ago may be of zero value now. And I used to work at Motorola, and one thing that we had that took years to develop was something called Iridium, a multi-satellite, hundreds of satellites orbiting the Earth and using those for communications. At the time it was conceived, it looked like a great business plan. Well, guess what happened? GSM came along, and for most parts of the civilized world, GSM was a great way to hand off calls and to have calls be able to be completed no matter where you were in the world, as long as you were in a city or actually South Korea and I forget where else. I think there's one other country that still use CDMA signaling rather than GSM. So, I mean, there are ways to translate, but the use of Iridium was minimized. There wasn't a commercial business model. And so the whole thing was sold off by the time it was implemented for pennies on the dollar. Now, it was valuable to the US military because they were looking at the Middle East, to Iraq, Kuwait, and Iran. And those areas don't necessarily have GSM coverage, so that something like Iridium was extremely valuable to the military. That the whole business plan, as I said, the commercial business plan, just never materialized. So change is good. Change is to be accommodated. In the traditional approach, we have project-based budgeting, and funding is tightly controlled by finance. Has anybody ever seen that? Don't put your hands up all at the same time. What we're talking about with the lean agile approach is what we call value stream funding. The value stream really is all the functions that are required to produce a certain set of value for the customer. Let's look at a hospital environment. One value stream would be the inpatient, handling inpatients, where they're brought in through the emergency room or by a doctor's referral to the hospital, and it goes all the way through until the bill is paid by insurance and some usually by the person who was using the hospital. So everything along that line would be a value stream, and that's what we would fund. And remember, I said that we have, what we want to do is fund a steady stream, so that we'd fund a number of people, number of teams to be working throughout an entire time box, or usually for budgeting purposes, a year, so that we're not starting and stopping projects. We're not turning on and turning off financing, so that we avoid some of the historic things that we've seen around here, where sometimes at the end of the year, we require non-payroll workers to go on furlough for a short or long period of time in order to maintain budgets. Now, if we've got everybody funded through the end of the year, there's no reason to do that. We still bring work to the people. Now, with a traditional approach, we adhere to waterfall, milestone, or stage gate project-driven work. Now, stage gates or quality gates really take a look at what's been delivered and whether or not it's on schedule. It doesn't matter that much about the quality of what's delivered. I mean, you can deliver a set of requirements. You could think that it's complete, but it may not be. You can deliver a high-level design or a testing plan, and that really doesn't provide immediate value. So what we want to do with Lean Agile approach is adhere to and focus on outcome driven value delivery. So we want to be able to show the customer, give them something that they can use, that they perceive value in, and that the corporation can receive some value from that. Now, rather than waiting to be paid until we deliver a whole mass of functionality that may or may not be valuable to the customer at that point in time, we're delivering all along the way. Yeah, there may be more payments that are involved. The thing is that the customer derives value from it, and the corporation that developed it derives value from it in the increased number of payments. You can also be involved in the market much sooner if you do incremental deliveries, if you have a minimum viable project or product that can be deployed to the customer. They can get into the market sooner and increase their market share by additional deliveries. It's usually the company that gets into the market first that can derive the most value from that particular market. So you want to be able to get things to your customer quickly and improve upon them. Okay. We'll talk a little bit about cost center budgeting. With cost center budgeting, the way we do it, you have multiple cost centers that are required to deliver something. So a project requires collaboration of cost centers, assignment of people, and usually you don't get dedicated people, budget, and a schedule. It takes multiple budgets to build a single project budget. So now if you're crossing sectors or you're crossing silos, you've got to pull money out of each one to contribute to the project. So what are the results? Slow, complex budgeting process. You've got to have sign off from finance for everything that you want to change. Leads to utilization-based planning and execution so that you determine how many people are going to be used at what period of time, and you budget based on that. Now, we know how accurately we can budget, so that hasn't worked out historically all that well. You get low program throughput because you have a number of times where you have disconnects. You have to wait for other teams within that organization, within the project to be able to deliver. And it really moves people to the work. You have a project, you bring people in to work on that project. Okay. Rather than with the lean agile method where you bring work to the people and you fund the people rather than the project. One of the problems that we see is increased cost and delay. When overruns happen, project accounting and rebudgeting increases the cost of delays and impacts culture. So if you have a project that is running over, what do? We have to get more budget. We've got to go through and we've got to talk to the finance organizations that handle each of these cost centers. Get their agreement if their cost center is impacted. If we need more people, it's going to impact other projects that they have lined up. So what we want to do, and the result here is wait for new budget approval. We delay until we get that. So there's a cost associated with that to us and to our customers because the customer can't get in the market as soon as they would if there was no overrun here. Cost variance analysis, blame game, and occur, and it threatens transparency because somebody gets blamed, and you have consequences usually. And then resources scramble to be able to do this work, and also if they are reassigned to other work. So that's something that we want to avoid, definitely. So our solution is to fund value streams, not projects. So as I said, we fund for a particular time box. We fund the people that are necessary, that we estimated are necessary to deliver that value, that functionality in that time box. And there are no costly and delay-inducing project cost variance analyses. So you know how many people there are, you know what the budget is for those people. They'll be doing the work. And we'll talk about some of the problems next. There are no resource assignments or reassignments, I should say, so that when you finish with the work that you had to do, you pull something else off the backlog. There's no blame game for project overruns. There may be some additional time that's necessary, and the business will analyze what that means and prioritize things accordingly. So what we need to do is control and fix costs with the increased flexibility of the lean agile development, so that lean agile budgets and resources are unaffected by future cost overruns or changing priorities. Say we have two features that we have to deliver. Okay. Feature one, we estimated it at taking, say, 12 weeks or 10 weeks, then we'd have 2 weeks to work on feature two. Well, if our estimates are wrong and we need more time to complete feature one, we're transparent. We talk to the business. We tell them what our best estimate of the overrun is going to be, how much time it's going to take. We don't have to talk about budget because we're already funded. We're talking about the time and the priority of this feature over subsequent features. It's up to the business to make the decision of what's worked on. Do we continue with feature 2 and drop feature 1? Do we continue with feature 1 and push out feature 2 and maybe some other features? That's all based on the business, based on customer feedback. Now, what do we need to do to satisfy contracts? What do we need to do to satisfy the customer? But the thing is, we're funding the total number of developers for that particular time box. This case, we're talking about a program increment. This is a safe concept that's bled over into general agile development. Okay, so it takes the responsibility for mitigating this change from the development team to the overall team. The developers need to work with the business on this to inform them as to why additional time is necessary. The business has to honor that and then make the best decision based on the facts that they have as to what the priority needs to be and what the team needs to be working on next. And again, remember, this is fixed cost per time box. You don't worry about budget overruns. The thing that you're concerned with is the priority of what's developed and what your deviations are from your estimates. That's all. Okay. Now, at the portfolio level, we have guardrails that keep the portfolio moving in the right direction. 4 things: applying investment horizons, where we take a look at what the value of the deliverables or the product is, where we have lower value up front, where we were able to deliver just a small number of a product, where it opens up where we can make a lot in the market if it's a good product and a lot of customers need it. And then when the project has to be sunset, where the product needs to be sunset, where we reduce support on it, where we retire it. We also utilize capacity allocation, as we've been talking about, the number of people that are required for each portfolio item, and whether it's an epic or however you designate that portfolio item. You want lean budgets, which means that, as I said, you're funding based on the number of people that you have working on whatever effort it is. Yeah. And then what you need to do is the governance needs to approve EPIC initiatives. These are usually large EPIC initiatives. And then you always engage the business owners in the budgeting process, and the business owners are engaged in what is being developed. Something that you may hear is a term called cone of uncertainty. And this is illustrating a waterfall type project. And this, it's feasible here. But in general, based on statistics from thousands of projects, we start with a solution where we agree with the customer what's to be delivered. Okay, we determine how we're going to deliver it and when we're going to deliver things. So we complete the requirements, complete the design, do all the development and testing and everything like that, and we get to the deployment. And as I've said before, it may or may not, may not, address what the customer requirements are at this point in time. And the actual solution should have been something different. But if we do this waterfall type approach or a phase gate type of approach, we generally don't have enough time to adjust to what the solution should be once we get past some point here in the development cycle. We don't have any feedback from the customers at that point. Now, where we give them something that works so that they can use it, that they can see whether or not it satisfies their desires. While it may satisfy the requirements that they gave us, it may not be exactly what they wanted or what they can use in their business. Now, I don't have another graphic here, but with Agile development, we have multiple solutions that we can consider. So you'd have this repeated several times. And what you want to be able to do is be willing to take any of those solutions and develop any of those solutions as you get feedback from your customers, so that you have a much higher probability that you're going to hone in on the actual solution. So our solution is to pivot from plan to vision, value-driven deliveries. Now, we've talked about this. The one thing that I want to highlight here again is that when you're in a predictive or waterfall solution paradigm, you hand off and the delivery is a large chunk of functionality at a late point in time. With Agile, what you're doing is every time box, you're delivering some valuable functionality. This is usually something called a minimum viable product. And you will also hear a term called minimum marketable feature that is used to define what is added to the functionality all along the way. And so each time box, you're delivering something more and more valuable. Now, the key is that here, two things. You're delivering value to the customer that they can use. They can potentially get into a market sooner. Plus, they're giving you feedback on what you've delivered to them. If they like something, they can tell you. If they don't like something, they can tell you, and you can make changes based on that. It's all along the way. Okay, so that one of the things that you really need to consider with this is continuous delivery and continuous testing, so that you're doing continuous building and testing. So like every day or multiple times per day, you're building and testing, automating all of that. And when you get the slides, I'll let you take a more in-depth look at this. But this is really just building on what we've been talking about. This slide shows what needs to transform and shifting from project to product mindset. So for customer and business value, we have an inward focus on it in a project mentality, and we're going to customer focus with a project from a product mindset or a customer oriented mindset. Okay. Feedback and learning key metrics in a project paradigm. We're trying to get it right. And in a product mindset, what we're trying to do is to learn and improve how we do things and how we deliver value and what we deliver. So that's how you read this, and I'll let you take a more in-depth look at this because we're going to have to get going on these to leave some time for questions. Now, we've been talking about rethinking. So one of the concepts is you have to unlearn the way that you've been doing things and learn how to do the new way. So individuals and teams have been working from the plan-driven approach for years. We've had what we consider success with that. So changing is going to take time, it's going to take patience, and it's going to take practice. Now, here's a fairly short video. I don't know if anybody's seen this, but it's called the Backwards Brain Bicycle. And it, well, I'll let the video speak for itself, and we're going to try this same setup again.
Hey, it's me, Destin. Welcome back to Smarter Every Day. You've heard people say it's just like riding a bike, meaning it's really easy and you can't forget how to do it, right? But I did something. I did something that damaged my mind. It happened on the streets of Amsterdam, and I got really scared, honestly. I can't ride a bike. Before I show you the video, what
Yeah, can you turn the captions on?
Trying.
Okay, I can see him now.
back to Smarter Every Day. I've heard people say it's just like riding a bike, meaning it's really easy and you can't, right? But I did something. I did something that damaged my mind. It happened on the streets of Amsterdam, and I got really scared, honestly. I can't ride a bike like you can. Before I show you the video of what happened, I need to tell you the backstory. Like many 6-year-olds with a MacGyver mullet, I learned how to ride a bike when I was really young. I had learned a life skill, and I was really proud of it. Everything changed, though, when my friend Barney called me 25 years later. Where I work, the welders are geniuses, and they like to play jokes on the engineers. He had a challenge for me. He had built a special bicycle, and he wanted me to try to ride it. He had only changed one thing. When you turn the handlebar to the left, the wheel goes to the right. When you turn it to the right, the wheel goes to the left. I thought this would be easy, so I hopped on the bike, ready to demonstrate how quickly I could conquer this.
And here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Destin Sandlin. First attempt riding the bicycle. Yeah.
I couldn't do it. You can see that I'm laughing, but I'm actually really frustrated. In this moment, I had a really deep revelation. My thinking was in a rut. This bike revealed a very deep truth to me. I had the knowledge of how to operate the bike, but I did not have the understanding. Therefore, knowledge is not understanding. Look, I know what you're probably thinking. Destin's probably just an uncoordinated engineer and can't do it. But that's not the case at all. The algorithm that's associated with riding a bike in your brain is just that complicated. Think about it. Downwards force on the pedals, leaning your whole body, pulling and pushing the handlebars, gyroscopic precession in the wheels, every single force is part of this algorithm. And if you change any one part, it affects the entire control system. I do not make definitive statements that often, but I'm telling you right now, you cannot ride this bicycle. You might think you can, but you can't. I know this because I'm often asked to speak at universities and conferences, and I take the bike with me. It's always the same. People think they're going to try some trick or they're just going to power through it. It doesn't work. Your brain cannot handle this. For instance, this guy, I offered him $200 just to ride this bike 10 feet across the stage. Everybody thought he could do it.
Stand. So, this way. So, whenever you're ready, you have to keep your feet on the
on the pedal. Go. Keep your feet on the pedal. Once you have a rigid way of thinking in your head, sometimes you cannot change that, even if you want to. Here's what I did. It was a personal challenge. I stayed out here in this driveway and I practiced about 5 minutes every day. My neighbors made fun of me. I had many wrecks, but after 8 months, this happened. One day I couldn't ride the bike, and the next day I could. It was like I could feel some kind of pathway in my brain that was now unlocked. It was really weird though. It's like there's this trail in my brain, but if I wasn't paying close enough attention to it, my brain would easily lose that neural path and jump back onto the old road it was more familiar with. Any small distractions at all, like a cell phone ringing in my pocket, would instantly throw my brain back to the old control algorithm and I would wreck. But at least I could ride it. My son is the closest person to me genetically, and he's been riding a normal bike for 3 years. That's over half his life. I wanted to know how long it would take him to learn how to ride a backwards bike, so I told him if he learned how to ride a backwards bike, he could go with me to Australia and meet a astronaut. Are you going to give up? Go ahead. This is how it starts. Look at this. This is such a big deal. Get up. You got it. Did you see his brain get it? So in how many weeks have we been doing this? 2 weeks? In 2 weeks, he did something that took me 8 months to do, which demonstrates that a child has more neuroplasticity, am I even saying that right, than an adult. It's clear from this experiment that children have a much more plastic brain than adults. That's why the best time to learn a language is when you're a young child. All right, today's bike log. I can ride smooth, I can ride fast. I'm thinking the experiment is over. Okay, now I'm in Amsterdam, a city that has more bicycles than people. The question is, can I ride a normal bike now? I mean, I've spent all this time unlearning how to ride a bike. If I go back and try to ride a normal one, will my brain mess up? So I've tweeted a Smarter Everyday meetup, if you will, and I'm going to see if somebody brings a bicycle, and I'm going to try to ride a normal bike. It's backwards. It's backwards. This was one of the most frustrating moments of my life. I had ridden a normal bike since I was 6, but in this moment, I couldn't do it anymore. I had set out to prove that I could free my brain from a cognitive bias. But at this point, I'm pretty sure that all I proved is that I could only redesignate that bias. So what you're not seeing is just a group of people here looking at me, looking at the strange American that can't ride a bike because they think I'm dumb. But I'm actually 2 levels deep into this because I've learned and unlearned. All right. After 20 minutes of making a fool out of myself, suddenly my brain clicked back into the old algorithm. I can't explain it, but it happened in a very specific moment. Got it. I'm back. Oh, click. Hold it, click. I got it. Okay, there it is. There was the moment. Okay, I can ride a bike. I tried to explain this to the people around me, and they just didn't get it. They thought I was faking the previous 20 minutes, and I couldn't get anybody to believe me. That looked like I faked that, didn't it? Yeah. Just to fake. I'm faking. You don't think I'm lying, don't you? I'm not lying. I felt like the only person on the planet who had ever unlearned how to ride a bike, and I couldn't articulate it to anyone because everybody just knew that you can't forget how to ride a bike. So I learned 3 things from this experiment. I learned that welders are often smarter than engineers. I learned that knowledge does not equal understanding. And I learned that truth is truth, no matter what I think about it. So be very careful how you interpret things. Looking at the world with a bias. So that you think Justin, Smarter Every Day. Have a good one. Okay, if you want to support Smarter Every Day, you can download a free audiobook at audible.com/smarter. I recommend Commander Hadfield's book, which is An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth. I read it. It was awesome. If you think about it, I had to learn how to ride a different kind of bicycle, and my son as well. But Commander Hadfield had to learn how to ride a different spaceship. Not only that, but a different type of space station. He was on Mir and the International Space Station. Anyway, if you're interested in supporting Smarter Every Day, audible.com/smarter, An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth.
Okay. And the reason I show this is that we have to realize that when we're asking people to make changes, to learn something new, that it may take some time. And we have to be aware of that, and we have to plan for that. Okay. We're going to briefly go over some Agile frameworks. So I don't know if we'll get through all the slides tonight. I'll make sure that the package is put on the shared drive or the SharePoint where you can get to it. So a framework is a basic structure underlying a system, concept, or text. And all Agile frameworks are built around iterative development. So we have a plan, build, test, and learn cycle that we go through for each time box. Okay. We're breaking work down into bite-sized chunks. You have something that works early and you fail fast instead of too late. Failure, remember, is embraced, not avoided. So there are several methodologies that exist to organize software development structured around Agile principles. Major frameworks are Scrum, XP, Kanban, and Lean. So Scrum comes from rugby, where you get 8 individuals who are large, sweaty, and extremely powerful, going at each other, trying to pull a ball out and send it back to someone who can run. So the Scrum pillars and values are transparency, inspection, and adaptation, as we've been talking about, where we give visibility to everyone responsible. Right? It can be on a need-to-know basis, but we are transparent with the way things are being done, the way that development has progressed, and any of the impediments that we've seen. We do inspections, timely checks of how things are progressing toward our goals. And we adapt. We adjust the team's process to minimize future issues if inspections show a trend. And this was derived too from adaptation comes from manufacturing, because you look for trends whenever you're on the line in manufacturing. If you see that your parts are continually decreasing size by a 10,000th of an inch, you know that you need to change something within the process of creating that part. Scrum artifacts are product backlog, sprint backlog, and a product increment. Okay. I'll let you take a look at this in more depth. Scrum activities or ceremonies or events are backlog grooming, sprint planning, daily Scrum meeting or stand-up, sprint review, where the product owner explains what was accomplished and why or why not the team, and the team discusses what happened and why. Backlog is adjusted to get ready for next sprint. Within Agile, we always look for a demonstration at this point whenever we're going into the Scrum review. Retrospective determines what went well, what problems we had, and how we need to change things to mitigate those problems. And then there's also a ceremony called Scrum of Scrums. If you've got a large scale development, the Scrum Masters meet and discuss things like dependencies, common problems that they've had. If a Scrum team has completed something that another Scrum team is going to be working on, or what I mean is using a new tool or something like that that the next Scrum team is going to be using, that those things are discussed in the Scrum of Scrums. It's the Scrum Masters that get together and discuss things. So we've got some basic roles in Scrum. Um, this would be the product owner, although he didn't come across when I stole the slide, or she didn't. Product owner owns the product backlog and keeps it updated and prioritized so that if a development team or a Scrum team uh, finishes something, they can go right to the backlog and pull the next highest priority item off the backlog. Okay. And also make sure the businesses and the teams have shared vision and goals. Now, Scrum Master is the only other individual Scrum role. The Scrum Master is a servant leader of the development team. They assist with prioritizing the backlog. They're an Agile evangelist, so that they're the ones who keep the team and the business working in an Agile manner. And they're also the ones who make sure that Scrum is used effectively. They're the Agile coach for the team. Now, another thing that they do is they also work to remove any of the impediments that the development team discovers. So Scrum Master is the one that would take this outside, find out how to resolve it, raise it to the proper people who need to know about it. What this does is it lets the development team just develop. Okay. The dev team builds the product. They're self-organizing. They get to manage themselves. They determine how they're going to be doing things. If some people need to take testing roles, or if it's going to be a rotational basis that they'll be doing testing. What you want to do is build cross-functional specializations so that you want to be teaching about what you have expertise in to the rest of the team. Okay, so for a sprint, this is just a different way of illustrating what we were talking about before, where it's an iterative process. And what you want to result in is a potentially shippable product at the end of the sprint. Now they say 1 to 4 weeks here. We've standardized on 2 weeks. There are some changes. Some teams work on a 3-week sprint, but that's been pretty much it. Now, it's an example of a Scrum team calendar where you go through sprint planning, you have your daily stand-ups, and then you go through a review and a retrospective at the end of the sprint, 2 weeks. Okay, and you keep doing that. Every 2 weeks, you do the same thing, which ends up in another release, and you start another time box here. Okay, so remember that you also have to do backlog grooming, which and refinement and prioritization. Okay. Other ways of developing are extreme programming. XP really focuses on software, and it's software development best practices rather than prioritizing work and getting feedback. I'm going to ask you, if you're interested in these, do some searching on the net, on the web. This is, yeah, we're running out of time here. Test-driven development is another way of doing things, where you start with creating the tests and then develop based on being able to pass the tests. Lean, and I like how they phrase this, is the not agile kind of agile. It originated with Toyota, and it was involved with the car manufacturing, where they were eliminating the waste. Their goal is to develop product with 0 defects in the shortest amount of time. We talked earlier about Kanban. Yeah, it's the art of it originated as the art of using Post-it notes to show work in progress and create a sustainable workflow. There are a number of tools these days that allow for an electronic Kanban. And really, at the very simplest, you have a to-do list, things that you need to do, things that you're doing, and things that are already done. Now, one thing that is not illustrated directly here is the concept of work in progress. What you'll a lot of times see is a number of each of these different columns, which will indicate the total number of cards or post-it notes that you can have at one time within that particular column. Okay, what you want to do is minimize the work in progress and maximize the flow through the board. Okay, and a little bit about SAFE, because for the last year, I know we've had a lot of concentration on SAFE. So SAFE isn't a rigid prescriptive set of processes. It's a framework. It's not a quick route to cost savings. There's a lot of effort that needs to be devoted to it. You've got to change the way you think. You've got to change the way you finance things. You've got to change the way that you interact with your customers. It's not a quick, short win, although you can get some quick wins from it in the very near term. The full savings are realized long term. It's not the latest fad in software development, and it's not the next thing we're trying at AT&T or just another process change. Okay. What SAFE is, it's a framework. It's a path to business agility, a proven set of principles and practices. And what you're doing with SAFE is you're scaling agile development to the corporate or enterprise level. So rather than having people running around assuming that they know what to do, there's a framework that you have where when you work within that framework, you take the results, the actions of Scrum teams and multiply it rather than add it. So that Scrum teams, everything is on a cadence so that everybody's working within the same cadence, the same time boxes, that multiple teams are working at the same time and they're delivering value on that cadence. It is based on industry proven best practices, and it's based on knowledge of multiple disciplines. Some of the things that were pulled from Kanban, some things were pulled from Lean and other areas, extreme programming and other places. It's a way to bring lean manufacturing, agile methodologies, and DevSecOps together into a coherent business framework. And it is potentially a way to future-proof our business so that we're working on the right things. Now, the Agile Center of Excellence has some communities of practice, and everyone's invited to these. There's Agility for Everyone, and COP is Community of Practice. Agile Transformation, Product Agility, which is Product Owner, Product Manager. And this is not Project Manager, it's Product Manager. Release Train Engineer, Scrum Masters, Lean Portfolio Management, and DevOps and Technical Agility. We've got communities of practice established for these. Now, the Agile COE has some wiki pages out there. We'll be relocating them as we change tools. But we provide training, and people at AT&T can achieve SAFE certifications that are industry standard, and they are transferable from company to company. We provide Agile labs, which can be now the SAFE certification classes can only be delivered to direct employees. Agile labs are concept labs, or concept classes that are deliver AT&T specific information, and these can be shared with non-payroll workers. We have Agile, a short Agile video that we're coming up with, and through TU, we have an Agile boot camp that is out there. It's about 6 hours worth of classes. They're in small increments though, so that you can take them at your own pace. And we're working on some integrating PLE courses too. Now, one benefit if you're an AT&T employee is that you can join the Agile Alliance at no cost. AT&T is a cornerstone sponsor of the Agile Alliance. So any of the benefits from this you're able to realize just by joining. And then I'll include, as I said, the links here. There are 3 videos here that are kind of interesting to watch. It's a penny passing exercise where the advantages of small batches are illustrated. Okay. And also down here is a link to scaledagileFramework.com, where you can find out a lot more about SAFe if you're interested. Okay, that's the end of the slides, and it's almost 7 o'clock Central Time, Standard Time. So any questions?
I was just asking in the chat room, will this deck be shared?
Oh, yes. Yes, I sent a copy to Brian Berry, and he should be putting it out where all the class information is.
Okay, thanks, Harry.
Sure. Anything else?
What was the name of that first video that you shared on YouTube?
That was this one. It's a David Marquette video. If you Google or Bing David Marquette, Marquet, Greatness by David Marquette is the video.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All of these are available on YouTube. So there's this is one of my favorites. This Formula One pit stop. It illustrates the difference between a pit stop in the 1950 Indianapolis 500 and a pit stop in 2013 at a Melbourne Formula One race. And it's quite dramatic. It's kind of a fun one. I'd like to thank you all for attending today. And Wednesday, back to the stuff that will be on the test.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a good night.
Great class.
It was a great class. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was long. I mean, maybe they hear us.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Everybody take care.